Welcome to the Three Old Goalies podcast, brought to you by thesquad.com. THESQWAD.com. On this episode, we welcome USL Championship goalkeeper from the El Paso Locomotive, Evan Newton. Parents, be sure to have earmuffs at the ready, as the Three Old Goalies are just that, old. Their views are their own, not the views of their employers, our sponsors, or our supporters. Every once in a while, one of our favorite four-letter words gets thrown in the mix, so have those earmuffs on the ready for the kids. Three Old Goalies is not suitable for goalkeepers under the age of 17. Be sure to check us out on Twitter and on Instagram, as well as our new home at delusion.group. That's delusion.group. Music for the show is provided by the Floodgate Operators. Be sure to check out their new album that's dropped on Spotify. And now, on to the show with hosts Evie and Bone, Eric Vaughter, and Greg Deutsch.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth episode of Three Old Goalies for 2022. My name is Eric Vaughter. I'm one of the hosts, along with Greg Deutsch, and our guest tonight is Evan Newton from the El Paso. What is the El Paso USL team called, Evan?
We are the Locomotives.
All right, the El Paso Locomotives. And you will notice that Evan is not exactly what we'd call an old goalie. So, between him and Alex, we're starting to go down in the chronological order. I think we got three old goalies who are hosts, and then young goalies who are being interviewed. But
have you had John on yet?
Oh yeah, we had John on. John's an old goalie now. He quit playing.
That's four old goalies then, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So, but thank you for taking the time to join us, and I'm sure the as Greg was saying, we've had a surprising number of people listen to this podcast, certainly more than we ever dreamed of, and we've tried to keep it specifically to goalkeepers and not just for the visiting part of it, but also, hopefully some of the younger goalkeepers who have aspirations like you guys did when you first started playing will listen and take some pointers from it, and maybe, in the years down the road, they're playing professionally. So thank you for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, Greg, let's jump into it. We'll take the intro later on with Ryan.
Yep. All right. Well, first, talk about Ryan. I want to say before we started, thank you so much for doing this, Mr. Ryan Sparks, because without you, this would have never aligned. And as we know, it's a lot of contacts in the world, and we're glad, Evan, that you're able to contact, us along with Ryan, and love to hear, that story, which we'll obviously get to. But again, thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Evan, for hooking us up. So, Evie, you're going to be blown away by a few things, so just sit tight over there.
Relax. Gotcha. All
right. I heard Ryan hooked you up with some inside scoops, so I have no clue what's coming, but I'm excited.
Oh yeah, either does Evie, which is good. So first, we always like to hear the background of, our guests. So you were born and raised in Virginia, and that's where you played your youth. What's amazing, two things here. You played at IMG, and ready, Evie, you played for Mr. Alan Dawson at ODU.
No way. That's cool. That's cool.
And the reason I say that, Evan, we're friends with Alan, and we're really friends along with him with a gentleman named Joe Pereira, who's an ex-teammate of Evie and myself. And we met Alan through Joe. So here's some dating. They both coached at Methodist University.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Joe
both went to ODU. So
yeah, Joe is the women's coach. Joe is the women's coach. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So small world. So
Joe is a good guy. Joe's a good guy, man. I like Joe.
Yeah.
He's
in Portugal now or something.
He went back and purchased a house on the street in the neighborhood in the Azores where he originally came from, but where the Pereira family, I guess, is from,
Oh wow.
and he and Tank spend time, I think half of the year is it going back there, and then the other half over here. And I mean, yeah, he's talking about going back to your roots. JP's done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Small
awesome.
world. Small world.
Small world.
Yeah. So Evan, what I want to hear is, growing up, how you got to IMG, and of course, what made you want to go to ODU.
Yeah.
And let me, before you do that, I want to make sure people know this, because when you say IMG now, it's not the same as it was back then. Right now there's a lot of competition with IMG, with academies and some other academies or other private places like that. And back then, when you heard IMG, it was like, oh my gosh, to me, it was much, much more powerful.
Yeah. So essentially just through ODP, like everyone starts back, when I was coming through, ODP was the big thing. That was how you got recognized. There's no academies and all that stuff. So, over time, the first year of ODP, I think the furthest you could go is like regional teams. So I did that. And my parents, we were kind of blown away because I was just playing for a small club. Which is funny. It was called Old Dominion Soccer Club, which had nothing to do with Old Dominion University. But that's the club. We were like 8 teams in the club, but we had a really good team. We made like Final 8 in State Cup, and we just had a really good group. And my dad coached us and stuff. And he has a C license, so like he's a decent coach, a very good youth coach. But anyways, through ODP, like somehow I made the regional team the first year, and we were kind of like, whoa, okay, maybe I'm actually decent. And then second year, they had like the regional team, and then they just had like a national ID camp. So I got invited to the national ID camp, and over the next year, you're just going to some different national team camps and different things, and then they have then they announced the residency roster, the residency program, and so I was invited down to residency back with so my group we had like Eric Lehigh, who ended up having a good career. I mean, a lot of people, like the 87s was like Freddie Adu was still there for like the last semester or year, I think, before he left to go to DC at like at 14.
Yeah.
And then
at 14.
And then like Michael Bradley was there, Danny Zatella, Dax McCarty, Nathan Sturgis, a lot of guys that ended up, Eric Avila, who had a good career as well. Then my group was, some different, made up of a lot of good guys that ended up having some good careers too. And we were the 88 group, and then the 89 group was like the bigger names out of that would have been like Josie Altador was down there with us and stuff. So I was there for 2 years, and then our coach was John Ellinger, and then he got the gig when Salt Lake became an expansion team, and he was the first head coach. So him and our goalkeeper coach Peter Meller, who's my guy as well, like love Peter, but they left, and then our assistant was John Hackworth. So John Hackworth took over as the head coach. And then they brought in a goalkeeper coach. He brought in a goalkeeper coach from Kansas City named Tim Mulqueen.
Mm-hmm.
And, me and Tim didn't really get on too well. But I kind of went from starting for our group to like the third in residency in like a month. And then I ended up getting cut after 2 years, like 3 months before the World Cup, which was a little bit like when you're 16, 17, that's a little bit tough to take, especially with the feedback I got. And it was just, but it kind of made me stronger in the end. Hi, buddy. Hey, made me stronger in the end. And then it made me have really like focusing on what they told me. Like they said that struggle with consistency at the time. And then it's funny because now consistency is like what I pride myself on. And I think something that I've like really built my career on is just day in and day out, like consistent. Right. So it's funny how that's kind of, I turned that and took that from being like a weak point to like something that I really think is a strength of mine. And I've really prided myself on. So, yeah. And then from there, I had some offers, obviously being with the national team, you have some, you're getting called by some colleges, and Duke called me early on. And once they found out my grades, I never heard back from them again. And there's I had quite a few talks. It came down to my final three was Virginia Tech, Old Dominion, and Clemson. And then I decided to go to ODU because I've always been kind of a guy. I like to be an underdog. Like I don't know. That's just how I've always been. I like to what can I do to go help? Can I help leave an impact somewhere, and not just be another one of the pack kind of things. And ODU, I knew how to. We were at the time was a top 20 perennial program every year. So a lot of times top 15. And they'd made the NCAA's at the time like 10 years straight, I think, or something. And so I knew the program was good. It was 30 minutes from home. So after leaving home for a couple of years in my teens, it was cool to come back. I lived on campus, so I was far enough away from home where I could do my own thing. And I'd see my family when I wanted to, but I was also close enough where I could see them. And then they're also, like I knew I'd play from day one. So I'd get games again, like we were talking about, like off camera here before. I'd get games from the start, and it didn't hurt that they offered a full scholarship, which in soccer is tough to get even at the national team level because there's so few scholarships given out. And
right,
there's a lot of things that I liked about it, and reasons I wanted to come back, and I just wanted to kind of help keep the program going and see if we could take it to another level. And it was a fun ride at ODU, and I knew I could still get to where I wanted to be in terms of being a professional through going there. So kind of checked all the boxes, and fortunately was able to have a nice career there and get to where I wanted to be. So that's
go back a little bit, because you make 5 appearances for the under 17 United States World Cup team. What was that experience like?
Yeah, and I don't know how accurate that is. I'm sure it was quite a bit more. I was there for 2 years, but we played in quite a few tournaments and things. But no, I mean, at one point I played against Brazil, in the Nike friendlies, back when they had Marcelo at the left back. They had
wow.
They had Anderson that was at United. He was in the midfield, as well as Danielson that went to Arsenal. And they had this other guy, their number 10, who I don't even know what happened to him. I think I don't know if he still plays or if he had a good career, I think, in the Brazilian league, but he was the big time guy. They had this number 10 who, it's funny because you talk about those 3 guys as well as the other, great players that they had on the team, I'm sure. It's funny you say this because I was just like last week, I went back and randomly thought about this team. I saw this player that signed for Santos, and I'm like, is that this guy I'm telling you about right now? I was like, is that the guy? And so I went and looked at the roster, and it ended up not being the guy, but it kind of brought me on this path where, you get in these like,
sure,
it's these holes that you go down on like YouTube, but this was just like this is like a Google search hole I went down, and I just started like, okay, well, who are the guys in this roster? Like, where are they now? Or some stuff. And some of them went to have some great careers, but anyways, it was this guy, I forget his name, but their number 10 was like the guy then, and I think he didn't even end up going the furthest, obviously, but I still remember like that was the guy getting all the buzz, and we lost 1-0 in that game. We missed a penalty at one point, like could have easily gotten a result out of that, which was whatever. And so, but yeah, man, it was cool to like represent my country at any level. And there was just, this isn't like to bash Mo Queen or anything. We've chatted since then, and all my nightmares for 15 years, or whatever, and are good now. But but no, he just wasn't I guess he just didn't prefer me. So then even, after like I left residency and then we went to college and like our whole group was in college, like my freshman year of college, I was, an All-American and still didn't get a call into the under 18s because Mulqueen was the goalkeeper coach, came in as the 17s, but then he also was the goalkeeper coach for the 18s and the 20s for like the whole time of my age going through. So like I was All-American, got no call into the 18s or 20s, as well as I was like, after my freshman year, that summer after my freshman year of college, I played PDL, and we were the best PDL team in the country, like in the regular season. And I got goalkeeper of the year and under 19 player of the year, in the PDL. Still got 0 calls in. I got no calls in to anything, And my sophomore year, I had a good, very good year. Like we went, both freshman and sophomore year, we went to Sweet 16 and NCAAs and like had good years and got 0 call-ins for any more like, under 18s or under 20s stuff. And under 20s, under 20s is a big one. If you get, if you're doing well with under 20s, like that's big for kind of like, especially at the time, because I was the main ways you were getting seen as American players was through like the national team stuff.
Sure.
So that was big stuff for like, MLS clubs and clubs, from Europe and things like that were like watching. So the fact that I didn't get caught into those was a bit frustrating. Now, they watch all their like all the, these scouts from Europe and stuff are watching all these clubs from when they're like 14 here, and develop, all the developmental clubs and stuff. So it was just, that was a bit frustrating in terms, again, but that's just football. That's how it goes. And unfortunately, like, he didn't really prefer me or whatever it was. And, but it's funny because all the goalkeepers, from around my ages, like I'm the only one that still plays and that's, had a career this long. So I take pride in that as well,
Yeah, it's interesting because we were doing it's interesting that you say that about Tim Mulqueen, he's a great goalkeeper coach. But being a goalkeeper, and if there's any kids out there listening, we were interviewing a young lady named Adelaide Gay who played at Chapel Hill, won a national championship, and Adelaide, I think, is maybe all of 5'4". I mean, standing on a stack of telephone books, and she was the reserve at Chapel Hill. They won a national championship. She tried to get into the NWSL. If you're too short, you're not. She played a little bit with the Carolina Courage. She's now playing over in Denmark, and we interviewed her for our club team, or our club goalkeepers at Tennessee Soccer Club, and she said, and I just stuck in my mind. She said, you're a goalkeeper. You're not gonna always be everybody's cup of tea, right?
Yeah.
The people who are selecting you are not always going to see you the way you see you, and as a goalkeeper, you just have to, like you alluded to earlier, you just have to deal with it and find a place where you can play, and find a place where you are somebody's cup of tea.
And I agree, and that's 100% right. And I mean, it was just look, it's been frustrations. That's always gonna be a frustration because it's always gonna be someone that doesn't really prefer you, and there's gonna be people that love you. And at that particular time, unfortunately, it was just kind of some big years of things that, who knows. Look, you can't wonder what ifs. And I'm not really that guy that does that. I just kind of move on with it, get on with it, and make the best of my situations. But, you always kind of wonder, like, okay, if I was into the 18s and 20s and, maybe doing that, and, especially, and it wasn't like I wasn't producing on the field. Like I was producing, and, I think pretty deserving of, getting called in, but, I guess he didn't think so. And, and it is what it is. So, but like I said, those things all, make you, if you allow it to make you stronger, it can also bring you down if you dwell on it. And unfortunately, I just allowed it to fuel the fire and continue to push me and continue to make sure I prove people wrong.
That's good. That's good. Sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's okay. So talk a little bit about the recruiting. I mean, those are 3, pretty good programs there. ODU, especially in that time frame, along with Clemson. What did at all 3 schools, was it a full ride, and were you the man, the only person that they were looking at? You mentioned
No,
it.
so the exact way it happened. So after my first year in residency, I got a call from Maryland. They were like, and they told my parents, hey, like, and Rob Vartugan was there at the time as the goalkeeper coach and assistant. And he said, hey, like, Evan's our number one recruit for 06, which was the year I was going to be a freshman. And so Maryland was kind of like quickly on the radar, and obviously Maryland is Maryland, right? So that was
Right.
like, so we knew like that was in the line, and that was okay, cool. Like, I'm their top recruit for 06. They needed a goalkeeper. Then about 5-6 months later, or something like this, they ended up signing Chris Seitz to as an 05. So Chris Seitz is a year older than me.
Mm-hmm.
So things changed a little bit there, and I still had a decision like whether I wanted to kind of go in there or not. But things, obviously, the dialogue changed a little bit, because I don't think maybe they hadn't seen Seitz yet, or maybe they weren't sure if he was going to come there. I don't know why, but they obviously didn't think they were going to get anybody in 05 or anybody like of the right caliber, and so they were like, you're a top guy 06. But then they got Seitz, and then I just said, oh, look, I'm not, like, I know Chris, like, great dude. I knew I could go. I knew I'd go in and like compete with him, and whether I won it out or not, like, who knows. But that's, again, you leave that on the coaches. So I wasn't willing to like go in there and battle it out, and who knows how long we're battling, and like I'm wasting years or whatever if I'm not getting it. If I am getting it, great, but like, you just don't know. So I wasn't willing to risk these years on not knowing.
Yeah.
So I made the decision to just kind of scrap that, and it ended up being a good decision because Seitz freshman year they ended up winning the national championship. So by the time I was coming in, it doesn't matter how well I was playing, he would have played, right? Like, they just won the national championship. So it ended up working out well in terms of that decision. And then again, I you talk to, like, I think there's a school in like the Midwest. It was where Matt Pickens went, Missouri State or something.
Oh, Missouri State, yeah.
So I remember Missouri State was like talking to me pretty heavily, and that chatted with your typical like Carolinas and Wakes and whatever, but they didn't have any money, and I wasn't interested in, like, I wanted money. I mean, I'm going through this whole grueling process of residency. I'm like, I'm getting some money at least,
Right.
And so I think Clemson, I don't think was going to be too much money. Virginia Tech, I believe, was going to be a full ride, and then and that's, I think Oliver Weiss was there at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
And they were trying to turn the program around, and then and then obviously ODU was going to give me a full, and everything like that, and I just kind of, probably a little biased too, because I grew up going to ODU games and things as well. So anyways, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. So Evie, he alluded to his career. Let me just share some insight. He started every game his freshman year, every game his sophomore year. He unfortunately suffered an injury his junior year, had a redshirt, comes back and has 9 shutouts. His
Wow.
senior year, he set school records in saves and shutouts. So, as you mentioned, what a stellar career. Did you enjoy playing for Allen?
Yeah, I did. I mean, Allen. I mean, Allen's Allen. I mean, and he's soft now, man. When I see him, but when we were there, he was not soft. There's plenty of runs where you're like, he's running you till you're puking or whatever. Couple good. I'll tell a couple good stories, because I don't know if he'll listen to this. If he does, then he'll laugh. But if he doesn't, then he'll never know. But
we'll make sure.
Yeah, make sure he watches. But the year I was injured, actually, I had a radial neck head fracture, so basically broke my elbow against UVA in preseason my junior year, and that was another like kind of bummer, because I told you earlier, like, I came off that freshman year, then I came off the PDL summer, and then I had another really good sophomore year, and there was a little buzz going. I started some buzz up then, and like you're on some momentum, and then just kind of got crushed. But anyways, they came back from a trip, and he was mad because that ended up being the year that I'm not saying it's because of me. I'm just saying the year that I was injured, like, was the first, like, we had 2 freshman goalkeepers that came in, and they're obviously supposed to kind of be behind me, but then they ended up having to play, and they were kind of switching off because they were both like kind of going through growing pains, and we ended up not. That was the first year in like 12 or however many years that we didn't make the NCAA's, and so Alan was obviously already a little grumpy. Sometimes took it out on me because like he felt. But like one night they came back from a trip and he was not happy, and they sent out a message to everybody like meet at, even the guys that didn't travel, like meet at the practice field, like, and they got back like 1:30 in the morning, and he gets the guys on the bus. He goes, don't even. He's like, just leave your runners on, get off the bus. No, we don't need soccer balls, nothing. And everyone's there, and he ran everybody for like 30, 45 minutes, like 1:30 in the morning. which now would probably get him fired, right? For like some kind of for some kind of like abuse or something, and everyone's so sensitive. But and then a couple other ones. I remember we lost to Hofstra. I think it was my freshman year, and we lost to Hofstra we were already like knew we were gonna get a bid to the NCAA's, pretty sure. But the first round of the conference tournament, we lost to Hofstra. And Hofstra was kind of like, we didn't really like Hofstra, and like they weren't like a rival, but it was just the two of us didn't like each other because we were kind of the two like powerhouses most consistently. And we lost the first round to them. And I remember like a day or two later, we're in the video room, like watching video on it, and you could just see him like rewatching it. It was just like heating him up. And I don't think it was planned. I think he just like spur of the moment was like, screw it, turn this off, get out to the training field, no boots, no balls. And he ran us for like an hour. Like he ran until like guys were throwing up blood, and like 3 guys started like kind of puking up blood, and then finally the trainer's like, look man, we got to stop. And so we stopped. So like
pull the Herb Brooks on you.
So I mean, like, this is back,
Yeah.
And there's a few other good stories. He almost, and this is a good one on me, and then I'll end it. But I had a couple, I wasn't the easiest student athlete for him in terms of like, having to withdraw from a few classes over the years, and him just like making sure I stay eligible, and like, and all these things. And if I'm honest, and I got in a couple, got in trouble a little bit, like just having fun, like partying or whatever. And I think he had this meeting with the whole team, and I was supposed to kind of be like a leader now. Like this was like my last like year or two, and I'm supposed to kind of be step into a leadership role. And he was mad about the season before, and he's like, I think it was this when I was coming back from injury. So it was the first season we didn't make the tournament. And so he's like setting this precedence, like, we need to like turn this around, get back on track. And he has this meeting, like, we have a meeting in a couple of days, to get things back going on start. And I'm late by like 10 minutes to the first meeting that like we're supposed to just be turning things around. And he ripped me, man, in front of everybody, just went off. And he goes to like one of the guys that ended up being the captain at that year. And he's like, should I cut him? I will cut him right now. He's like, and he's like literally telling the guy like,
this is in front of everybody.
Yeah. And I chatted with Dawson about this actually like a year or two ago when I was visiting, and I'm like, would you cut me? And he goes, I knew he'd say no, so like I just did it like for like kind of the just to make a point. But I was like, what if he said yes? Like then he's like, well then I'm in a bad situation, But
yeah,
but it's some good Dawson stories for you there.
Yeah,
but it was fun, man, and it helped me, it helped me to kind of grow up in ways, and also like learn some professionalism before you really learn professionalism at the pro level. It kind of like gets you on track a little bit earlier. Just being disciplined and doing the right things, and he wasn't easy on you, so you had to make sure you're bringing it every day, which happens in the pros.
Sure.
Not bringing it every day, you're sitting your butt on the bench, or you're getting you're not getting renewed your contract. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously your senior year, you have a very good year. What is anyone contacting you about getting drafted and going to the next level?
no, actually it was tough. Yeah, my so Trevor Adair had come in
Mm-hmm.
at the time. Um, rest in peace, by the way, and
Yeah.
Yes.
great guy. And so Trevor obviously had the situation at Clemson all happen, and he was without a school, and him and Dawson were really close. So after like about a year out, my senior year was when Dawson brought in Trevor to be the assistant, and Trevor came in and was the assistant for a few years before he ultimately ended up leaving ODU as well and pursuing other things. But Trevor helped me a lot because I got invited to the Seattle Sounders combine at the time. We like Dawson and Trevor were almost positive I was going to get into the MLS combine. They're like pretty sure, but I ended up not getting invited. So I got invited to Seattle, which they did their own scouting, and 90% of the guys, like 90% of the guys were the MLS guys that all went to the MLS combine, but they had their own like small 10% or so that they recruited on their own and researched on their own and scouted their own, and they were doing it out of Vegas. I don't know if you remember that they used to have for quite a few years. They had their own combine to do their own scouting, like which most clubs should do, but
Right. Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't happen in the MLS
Yeah.
a lot. The scouting's gotten a little bit better, but still nowhere. At that time it was nothing really, not a lot of scouting, and so I got invited to that. I went to that, did all right, and then what happened. So I trained the summer leading into my senior season. I trained with DC United for like a month and some change, month and a half. So I knew Mark Simpson well, who was up at DC, and because Mark Simpson I had met because he came down to Virginia Beach to be like a goalkeeper coach and assistant coach for the Virginia Beach Mariners for a couple years. And I met him because I used to train with the Mariners sometimes when I was younger.
Right.
And I met, and so he, he had followed me, and we kept in touch and followed me through my career and stuff in college and things. And then all 4 years in college, almost every summer, he was trying to get me in to train with DC. But at the time, they had Peter Novak as the coach, and Peter didn't really want other, like young guys coming in or college guys. But then Kurt Anolfo took over the year, before that summer I came in, and he was cool and they brought in like 2 or 3 of us, I think, maybe 4, like college guys to train. And so I went in there, and they also, their third goalkeeper had a ACL injury, so they kind of needed someone as well on top of that. So anyways, I got to train, and I was like in the game, like I was like training like a third goalkeeper, for like the MLS team. And Mark liked me a lot, thought he did well. And actually, like Trevor Adair tried really hard. Like I have to give it to him to like really find a place, and was calling around using his connections, and unfortunately just wasn't getting a lot of bites back. And then it just happened that like Mark Simpson talked to Tim Hanley. Do you know Tim Hanley?
Mm-hmm.
He was the goalkeeper coach at Houston for a while, and then now he's at Columbus actually. And then before Houston, I think he was at San Jose, but or maybe he went to San Jose after Houston. But anyways, so he talked to after the conventions or whatever, like they were like good buddies, and Tim respected Mark a lot. And I guess they were just chatting, and Tim's like, yeah, we're looking for another goalkeeper, blah blah blah. And Mark's like, I got a guy, you need to draft him, like this guy, blah blah blah. And Mark like went to bat for me, and Houston basically drafted me off never seeing me play. Like Tim Hanley called me, said like we talked for about an hour just for him to like, get to know me some, and I'm sure they watched a little bit of my tape or something, at least. But they kind of drafted me off of Mark Simpson. And then I went in, and I, without a contract at the time, I went in, and the first weekend that the U18 Houston Dynamo Academy team, for like the first weekend, the first kind of game of preseason, guys just play like 45 minutes each half or whatever just to get the legs going. And so the under 18s played the first team, and they're like, Ev, you're going to play the first half with the under 18s. And I'm like, oh shit. because like kind of the first, and I freaking balled, man. I had like probably 4 or 5 huge saves. I kept it 0-0 at halftime. It was 0-0, and so they signed me like that next, and then the second half, the first team, we ended up beating the 18s like 5-0 second half. So it ended up being like, luckily I went out and did the business, and they signed me like literally a couple of days after that game.
Yeah.
It's kind of a crazy story, and it just shows, you never know how it's going to happen, but that's how it all happened for me. So
Yeah, you mentioned, at the start, you were mentored by John Bush. Explain how you met John Bush.
yeah, so I met John because he went and played. He was playing for the A-League Virginia Beach Mariners at the time, and I just did private goalkeeper sessions with him. My parents, paid him, and we just did it like, just like you do now. And I trained with him for probably like a year and a half, 2 years. Yeah, and then he ended up leaving, going to Columbus, and then like started his like MLS career. And then Matt Bush, his brother, still lived in Virginia Beach for a long time, coaching in the Rush and everything. And so by that time, we had a Virginia Rush in Virginia Beach by the time my like college career was over. And yeah, so like after Houston, I was home for Christmas. I spoke to Matt, and Matt's like, "Hey, John's going to be in town this year for Christmas visiting us." And I said, "Hey, if he wants to train while he's home, like, let me know." So Matt, he's like, "Oh, cool. I'm not sure. I'll let you know." A week later, Matt calls me up. "Hey, you want to train? John wants to train tomorrow. You want to come out?" So we trained. We trained for 2 mornings, and then, hey, there he is. So we trained for 2 mornings, and then John was like, "Hey, well, we're looking." The old man that just came on, he's like, "We're looking for 3 at San Jose," and then he called up the Jason Batty at the time, and they brought me in a preseason with another college kid that they signed out of college or whatever, and it was just kind of between us two. And fortunately, They signed me, even though John was probably telling him not to. And fortunately, they signed me, and then I got to spend 2 amazing years with this guy here. So
John Bush, a newly minted old goalie.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Newly minted.
Yeah, because he just joined the old goalie fold.
Well, you have to have,
that I did.
You have to have 3 old guys for the show, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Since Ryan's not here, we got to call John up.
Exactly. All right, good evening, by the way, everybody. Good evening.
Man, how are you?
Good evening, Deutsche. I'm good. I'm good. Straight off the field, but I'm good. I got my Chick-fil-A in on the way home, though. That was a good thing.
Chick-fil-A.
In case listeners, we have John Bush. Evie didn't even know I was going to pull this out of my hat.
Evie knows you well enough to know he was coming on.
John Bush, thank you. You just got to hear a little bit how they met. I want to ask John, what was it like training with Evan?
Oh shit.
That's Deutsche. That says it all. I don't have to say anything.
That's the end of the interview. Thanks very much for joining us.
Yep. Everybody have a good night now.
Well, I don't think he really remembers much of it back when he was with the Mariners, but probably a lot of the earthquakes are just him trying to keep me from going off the ledge, and at times I might have been doing the same for him a little bit, just trying to listen.
All right, so let's see. Where do we begin? No, it was look. I mean, obviously, I don't remember much of it, but I trained Evan when I played for the Mariners. 150 years ago, back in Virginia Beach. I think he was a pudgy little fat kid, but we got over that with him. But no, obviously in San Jose, he came in, in a kind of a third/second role, and as EB can attest, I went through my time too. He he was excited to be there, was anxious to be there, but at the same time, he was young and needed to learn certain things. He's always been a very good goalkeeper, and he's proven that now. I mean, you see what he's done in the USL, and it's unbelievable. But back then it was, it was just he was learning to be a pro, right? And Evie's talked about this on probably every podcast we've had, right? You when you're young, you just have to learn how to be a pro, and he could handle the training and all that. But if I remember correctly, in those 2 years, I think he played one game, maybe a half of a game, a friendly, 2 games. Okay.
Yeah, I think
And
I played like 3 or 4 reserve games, and then I jumped in Swansea a little bit, and maybe like, so yeah, I got maybe a handful of games in 2 years, which is like we talked about at the beginning. You can't get much better doing that. You know what I mean?
yeah. So it came a point after that second year that and again, Evie's had this conversation not just with me, but with numerous goalkeepers over the years, that it comes to a point of your career where, do you just want the sweatsuit for a couple more years and be in the environment, or do you want to make a career out of this? And Evan and I had that conversation, because he wasn't quite sure what he was going to do after the second year, and he said, I could come back here and whatever. And I said, look, I'll be honest with you, don't take this the wrong way. I was like, I would have a blast if you came back, because him and I got on very, very well. I said, but you know, if you also, at the same time, if you come back next year, I'm going to kick you in the nuts, because you're not going to have a career. You're going to have 1 or 2 more years, and that's going to be the end of it. And I said, you have to go play. You have to drop down and you have to go play games. And, it's funny because I remember talking to him about it, and he was like, I don't know. And I don't know. And then I don't even know if Evan remembers this, but I remember him calling me at the end of the first year. I don't even remember where he played that first year in the USL.
I went to Arizona.
But I remember him calling me at the end of the season and just saying, "Hey, thanks. I forgot how much I love playing games." And the rest, I mean, is history. He owns most of, if not all, the goalkeeping records in the USL now. And so it was, again, it was what Evie's done to us all. It was a little bit of that reality check, a little bit of tough love of like, look, do you want to be in San Jose for a couple more years, get a couple more sweatsuits, that sort of thing, or do you really want to make a go at this? And he did. And like I said, I mean, he's still playing to this day, and that's a testament.
I want to throw
him.
a couple points out off of that. Like, one thing is like I'm fortunate to have John at the time, and I've learned a lot from John. And I took it to heart. I mean, obviously it helped that like when I was in like a adolescent age, I was learning from him, and I looked up to him, but then like when I got into a role, like he had now built his career when I had gotten into a pro role, and I told myself going in to San Jose, it was first like, okay, well, he's putting his name on the line for me, like I'm gonna make sure that he doesn't regret that. And secondly, I just said, look, I'm like at the time, I think you're like 14, 15 years in, like total professionally or something by the time I got in, and I said, like, I'm just going to do whatever John does. Like, he's obviously, it's worked for him. So, I mean, I remember like, man, I did everything like John. So John would go out, every Wednesday, and every fourth week he would take a week off.
Don't worry, those stories are coming. No, those stories are coming. Don't worry. I got 2 lined up.
I know one of them that's coming. But every like Tuesday and Thursday, or every Tuesday, I think maybe Tuesday, Thursday, we'd go to this like sports performance place, and I'd follow him there because he'd always offer like to me and John and Bingham at the time, who was there, David Bingham. He always said like, look, it's open if you want to come. And so I just did. And then obviously we had a relationship a little bit before, but that's when the relationship built over the 2 years of just kind of being with each other all the time. And but I just, whether it like kicked my butt or whether I was sore, like I just did it because I'm like, A, it's gonna make me better, and B, like it's worked for him, so I'm gonna learn as much as I can, and then on top of that, so anyways, every Wednesday he would do like crossing session, and so in every 4 weeks he'd take a week off, and so I'd go out to that even
not a week off, a day off.
Well, that Wednesday off,
Wednesday off.
We could rest that Wednesday every 4 weeks. We'd rest one Wednesday, and I remember, since John's gonna roast me a little bit, I'm gonna roast someone. So Batty, our goalkeeper coach, Jason Batty, I think after the first year, John, because Batty's like kind of got a family, he's got to come into training on days off, and he doesn't mind it because he's doing what he got to do, but he's like, oh man, another freaking Wednesday, So I think at the end of the year, John gives us some signed John Bush gloves, and he looks at it, he's like, John, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is your gift? Like what do I want your signed gloves for? But
listen, I was living in San Jose. I couldn't afford anything else.
But anyways, no, I'm like, look, I'm gonna follow John, do everything he does, and then I secondly, like when he gave me that advice to leave, obviously like any player, I'm gonna weigh that I don't know, and then your ego gets in the way. But I knew what I was capable of, and I had, like I said, we set off camera early on before we started kind of really filming. A lot of people they talk a big game, but they aren't actually confident in their ability to go do it. But like I knew I could do it. I just had to take the ego check. But if John told me to do it, I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna trust them, and eventually, and I did. I went into my meeting and I just said, look, we chatted, and I wasn't interested in coming back, whatever that meant, and and then it is what it is, and I was fortunate that something came after that, but yeah, I just trusted it. I just was like, okay, man, like I'm gonna trust what he says, and I'm gonna go do it, and unfortunately, it's worked out all right for me, but yeah, man, that was an interesting year. I mean, he also, John had to talk me off the ledge a few times, I think, for some things over those 2 years, but it was fun. We had a good time.
Before John tells someone,
he didn't give me any signed Bush gloves after those.
You didn't earn it yet.
You just gave him a keychain, right?
Yeah, I gave him the keychain.
I'm not going to give you some gloves, kid, but you get a keychain.
He gave me an HPG keychain.
He hadn't earned the gloves yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, man.
He hadn't got to that level.
Hey, tell him, John. Tell him when you're like when I left, I was like HO, like I was with HO, for my first couple years there, and then me and HO, like the contract was up, and John offered me some. He was like, "Hey man, if you want, like we'll put you in some HPG gloves, whatever." And I'm like, "I appreciate it." And then I asked him about the wrist. I said, "Hey, can we change up the wrist straps for me?" He's like, "Dude, like 3-year pro." He's like, "Haven't I taught you? Like you're trying to change up my wrist straps? Like, who are you, big time now?
Deutsche, remind him how many games he played up to that point, right?
That's what I'm saying.
You're absolutely
right. Asking for his name on his glove, yeah.
But when I look at the time, I was just asking.
No,
when I look back now, I'm like, man, what was I saying?
He wasn't asking for his name on the glove. He was asking me to change the entire wrist strap of the glove.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
For the Evan Newton model only.
I wanted
the Evan Newton model. I got you.
I needed my own model, man.
Yeah, yeah. Him and Oliver Kahn. I got you.
Yes, yeah. They're the one and the same.
Exactly.
So Evan, share with us. You keep saying you learned. What did you learn from John specifically?
No, and that was another thing I want to touch on. Like I think, like I said, I tried to pride myself on consistency. Part of it started back when I got, after the whole situation in residency we spoke about, and that was the main feedback I got, was like, there's like I think word for word, my feedback when they cut me was like, Ev, like you're the best goalkeeper we have in the country at your age when you're on, but we just don't know what we're getting from you every day. And that was tough to hear, because at one point you're hearing like, okay, well, you rate me high, but at the second point you're like, I'm getting cut right now, and you're saying like I'm inconsistent. So then from there, I just started trying to pride myself on consistency. I tried to work on it a lot, and then I just saw as time went, college went, time went, started building games, consistency started building, and then now you got to go be consistent at the pro level every day at the training environments and those things. And John's just, John's good and bad days were like this, and I was actually having this conversation with someone the other day, like about, how a goalkeeper, you just need to be like you're good and bad days like this. Obviously every now and again, John would have a day up here, and every now and again is a day down here. But like for the most part, like you couldn't tell unless you were like a goalkeeper or like a very trained goalkeeper, like when he was having a good and bad day. It was just, his bad days probably you wouldn't even notice it, but for him it wasn't, maybe the best days or something. And I could notice his bad days sometimes, but even other days I didn't really notice it, but to him it might have been. So I think that's really a big thing I took from John, is just like the level of dedication it takes and the hard work. And then just also, just, fine tuning it to where like you're here all the time in this little zone, and that's what I tried to really take away. And I've tried to, really implement in my career.
Yeah. All right, Bushy, you got some stories that you want to share. So now.
So, well, I mean, first of all, look, we've all gone through that, right? And I think when you go from college to being a young pro, and then a young pro to a seasoned veteran, the biggest thing you do learn is that consistency level in training, but also in games. And again, that's part of the training environment, but then it's also becoming a senior pro and getting your games and knowing your work and your progression each day, to get to that Saturday night. And that was part of his learning process, because, his good days were very good, but his bad days were, there was a big, inconsistency. And so, but that happens to every young pro, and, EB and I've talked about it many times. Like that's how you become a senior pro, when you can bring those two very close together. And I learned from, Aiden Heaney's and Mike McGinty's and Pat Onsted's and guys like that I was always around and very fortunate to be around. And so that was one of the biggest lessons for Evan down there. And I'm very proud of him because, I mean, he's put a lot of time and a lot of effort into it, and he's reaping the rewards now. Like I said, I think he's got probably most of the USL records, and that speaks a lot. That speaks about consistency, because you wouldn't be hanging around. You still wouldn't be there if he wasn't doing his business day in and day out. All right, so that's enough of.
Can we record all these like nice things to say?
Oh yeah, these are now etched in history, Evan.
Yeah, can we get a loop? Can we like put a little loop of these together, like after?
All right. So two stories. So
hopefully one's from the garage.
Oh, one is for the garage. Yeah,
okay.
One is
that's
the garage.
That's a solid story. I don't know the other one.
Would you like me to start with that one, or you want me to start with the other one that you seem to have forgotten? Which one would you like to hear?
I mean,
first,
I feel like there's a lot of stories you have of me, but so I don't know what the other one, which one you're picking of the other one. But let's do that one first, and then we can do the one I know second.
Okay. So on Wednesdays, Frankie Allop used to give us off. And so when I first got there, I was like, well, what are we doing on Wednesdays? And I know we usually have Wednesdays off. And I thought, no, we're not having Wednesday off. We have Sunday off. That's enough. So we start coming in, Jason Bailey, goalkeeper coach, started coming in, and we'd only go for 45 minutes an hour, and we wouldn't hit the ground much. We'd do crossing and distribution, but I made a deal with Bats because he had young kids at the time that, look, give me three weeks in a row, and then the fourth one we're off, so you don't have to come in. So again, said, hey boys, it's optional, but come in if you want, and so majority of them did, some of them didn't, but
who's the some? Do you want to say who the some?
No. This is a polite show. Evie knows who it was. Evie knows exactly who it was.
Yeah.
So So anyway, Ev was coming in, and then all of a sudden, just randomly, nobody knows why he's not there. He didn't tell us. He just doesn't come in on a Wednesday. And we're like, huh, we're calling him, and it's going to voicemail and whatever, and no response on text message. We're like, oh, okay, well, maybe he's dead. I don't know. Well, it just so happens that night we happened to see, I don't know if it was on social media or Facebook or somewhere, we happened to see Mr. Newton walking a red carpet in Los Angeles.
All
don't remember
right.
this.
Now, a certain somebody that let's just say, I don't know if she was his publicity person or what, decided to put him in some sort of athletes walking the red carpet in LA.
Yes.
I think this is
Tuesday.
in San Jose somewhere, by the way. I don't think it was in LA.
No. It was in LA because you took a flight.
Ooh, this is getting
Because
good.
we looked into it. We did our research on this.
This is
Guys,
straight out of Slapshot, isn't it?
Guys, I had like two games.
I swear to God, I'm gonna open my robe and wiggle my dick at him, so we never have to do this.
That's exactly what. That's exactly what.
I'm running
Listen,
I had two reserve games, guys. I was.
He had two reserve games. He was walking red fucking carpets. I'm not kidding you.
Yes.
So of course, when I find this out Wednesday night, I text Batty right away. I'm like, dude, we got to hammer this guy tomorrow morning. Like, this is fucking unbelievable.
And that was my role, because Batty, we all had a good relationship. Even to this day, I'm 34. If us three get on like a group chat, like it's just roast. It's just like
yeah, you're the young guy.
I'm like 18 again,
So he comes in. He comes in on Thursday morning, and I'm like, "Hey, Newt, missed you yesterday." yeah, just I had some things to do. Just couldn't make it. Oh, you did you? I said, Bats needs to see you. Bats needs to see you in the office. What about what? I said, I don't know. He just come out earlier and said, hey, send Newt in when you. So he walks around the corner and goes, I'm giggling. I'm laughing my ass off. So he goes in there, and Bats, where were you yesterday? Well, like, seriously, what the fuck? Like, you're third string goalkeeper.
Was Frank in there too? I think Frank.
Frank was in there too. Frank was in there too. Like, all the coaches were in there, and they were
all
just
playing
giving it to him.
You're
you're the third string goalkeeper, and you're deciding just to take a day off and not show up, and and do you even want to be a pro? Like, whatever. And I think when he came back, we had taken the pictures off Facebook or whatever, and we put them on his locker.
Yeah.
So when he came back in, there's a picture of him walking the fucking red carpet on his locker. And we're like, seriously, this is what you missed? And, and just like he,
meanwhile, you got Wanda Lowski, Lynn Hart, like freaking what's his name?
You got Shea Salinas, you got Sammy, you got a bunch of senior pros in that locker room.
Shea, Sammy, you got Jason
Hernandez,
and then you got Alan Gordon. So not just senior pros, but guys that are just like, they love some good banter. So they're all great dudes, but like the second they have a chance to kind of do this, they're gonna do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, everybody you mentioned there, given the opportunity to go to LA on a plane and walk the red carpet with a hot chick, would have done it.
I don't know if I had a hot chick or not.
I don't remember saying anything about a hot chick.
Well, I don't know. You said something.
Evie,
okay.
I like it. This is a good new version, though.
Yeah,
I like
this
is a good version.
Yeah.
Evie just changed.
I just improved your story for you. So
yeah. Great. This is a great version.
That kid's okay.
So he got roasted for a little while on that as a third string goalie for missing it because he had two reserve games and he had to walk a red carpet.
Yeah.
So that was the first story. Now the second story was in the off seasons, as you guys know, like I always work out, but I work out pretty intensely. So he had at the end of the season. I think he
Let
went back
me
to Virginia
paraphrase.
Beach.
Let me start by saying this was the first session back from like the 2-3 weeks off or whatever.
Oh,
that
man.
I'm gonna start from that.
That's not good.
Okay, all right.
That's
Are you?
That's not a good one.
So,
Because you got all that pent up non-workout energy left. Yeah.
All right,
Virginia Beach or
continue.
whatever, visit family, and he comes back, and so I said, "Yeah, I'm training at 9 a.m. or working out at 9 a.m. tomorrow over at the facility." Da da da. With at the time it was a trainer. His name was Will that would train us, and I said, "Yeah, come join us." So the facility was set up where the gym was on kind of the first floor, but you parked underneath it, so it was a parking garage underneath it. So we would do these sets where you would go full out for 30, 45 seconds on a certain machine, on a certain body part, and then you do some sort of plyometric right after. So, you're killing your legs and then you're doing plyos or something like that. So we're about, I don't know, halfway through. I don't even know if we're halfway through the workout. And all of a sudden,
40 minutes.
he disappears. I'm like, okay, he had to pee, right? No problem. He had to pee. The bathroom's like 2 doors down. So I'm like, oh, he'll be back in 30 seconds. All right. So I keep it. Will keeps moving me. I keep going. And all of a sudden we're like, dude, where is he? Like it's been like 5 minutes now. He's not back. We keep going. And finally, eventually we see him come in the garage door from downstairs. And we're like, dude, are you okay? So where did you go? He goes, I was going to throw up. I went down to the garage floor and I laid on the cement because it was the only cool thing I knew that would be down there. And he said he's literally laying in the garage, like in the middle of the garage, laid out.
I was full sprawled out in the middle. Like if a car came around, like they would
You'd
have to
have
stop
got
it. Like I was just, I didn't care though. It was just because it was so hot in there on top of like the intense workout, like right back into it,
Yeah.
And you're just jumping right back in the fire. And on top of that, man, like it was hot in there, and I just like needed something, or else I was gonna puke everywhere. But I didn't puke. Luckily, I didn't finish the workout, but I didn't puke. That was the achievement of the day.
Yeah, that was a win.
So the young grasshopper learned not to come straight back in with the old guy.
Yeah, no, yeah, I
was there.
I could have told you that was a no game.
I was there the next session, man. I kept coming.
To his credit. To his credit, he came to every session once he was in town. He came to every session.
It was that was
he disappeared, and we were like, what the heck happened to him? And then he comes up and tells us he's sprawled out in the middle of the garage because it's a cold floor.
Wow.
Oh, good times. Good times. Yeah.
So Evan, Bushy alluded, you played with Arizona United, and that was sort of the jump start of your career as far as getting games because, 15, in 28 or 2014, you get 28 games. 2015, you move on to another team, Oklahoma City Energy, you get 27. You move on to Sacramento Republic in 2016, 2017, you get 38 games. You go to FC Cincinnati in 2018, 20 games. Indy 11, 2019, 2020, you get 42 games. What a role right there. Well, first of all, it's sort of like a big loop to me as I read all this, Arizona, Oklahoma City, Sacramento, Cincinnati, Indy, New York City, Vancouver, and El Paso. So like it's just a giant circle of moving almost like every year. What is the mentality that you had to have because of moving every year, literally?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, man, and it wasn't easy. And like I said, and again, this kind of goes back to the me and John talked ever since the San Jose days. We talked every like few weeks or to a month or two, and at the time he was still playing, so we just update on what's going on, how things are going with him, and then he'd give me advice or we just chat about what's going on with me, and I always kept in my mind just like again, and it's funny that John said it because he almost repeated exactly what I said before we started the show is it's about long-term success. Like, do you want long-term, or did I want to just stick around for a year or two and then call it quits probably? And I always try to keep that in mind when I made these decisions. You know, like the Arizona situation, I played and they offered me a contract. A guy tried to take me to Germany. I went over to Germany for like a month and a half and trained and had a couple trials. Actually trialed with Schalke's second team for like 3 or 4 days, and did really well actually. And unfortunately, we found out from the agent that they're close to signing me, but I didn't know the language. I tried to talk to the coach. He was an older guy, so he didn't really know English. All the players did, but it was a great. And I trained with a couple other teams in the regional liga and like uh, VFL Osnabrück. I was training with their reserve team. Like not all of them were looking for keepers at the time, but I was just staying sharp for like any opportunities that I got because it's so tough, you know, in the winter. But I just went for it and tried it. And while I was there, it was a great experience for me. But while I was there, Arizona offered someone else a contract because they couldn't wait around. So
Oh.
when I came back, you know, Jimmy Nielsen really liked me. I played really well the few games against Oklahoma that year before when I was at Arizona, and so Jimmy signed me. And I thought that'd be a great idea because Jimmy was obviously a top goalkeeper, and I knew he had close ties with Sporting, right? So, and that was what I was talking about actually, in terms of like after that year, I had a really good year and was up for goalkeeper of the year that year, and Jimmy told me about a month before, like, hey, Sporting wants to bring you in after the season to train for like a week just to see you, but they're looking to potentially probably bring you in as a backup to Melia. And I just wasn't ready. Like that was only 2 seasons I'd played like fully. I wasn't really ready to go back sit on the bench, and I tried to keep that long term. So then I had an offer from Sacramento come, and Sacramento was supposed to go MLS the next season, 2017. Right. So I was like, well, and they were telling me, hey, we want to bring you in for a year, and then we'd like to take you to MLS with us. And so I was like, cool, like let me go play another season, like get more games under my belt, and then when I go MLS, I go in there, prove myself, and like hopefully they take me, and that's a way to get back into the league. And then they just never happened there. So 2 years I was there, just never happened. And in the off season, we're kind of like renegotiating. And after those 2 seasons in Sacramento, and I find out that Cincinnati is now taken over as the #1 spot in terms of like getting the MLS bid. So I found out through the grapevine that Cincinnati was very interested in me. We give them a call, and within like 2 days, I'm signed. Like we negotiated, talked about it, I signed there, and I was like, all right, here it is again. Like let me go and prove myself, and hopefully, I knew they were going to go MLS. Hopefully, I can go MLS with them. And then that didn't work out. I ended up having a great year and winning the Golden Glove, but they just didn't. They took my the guy that was like my backup, a guy Spencer Ritchie, great guy. But that's how it goes, right? And then they held on to my rights forever. I had a couple, like 2 or 3 MLS teams that had some good interest after that year, and like Cincinnati just took forever to give me a no, and like I couldn't move on until they gave me a no because like I was under like they had my rights, and it almost felt like I was in jail. It wasn't really. It was tough. Yeah. Because I'm like, how am I supposed to do it? Like, you're not giving me anything, and like I need to figure it in. So finally, by the time they did, like all the MLS stuff was kind of off the table, and I had an offer from the Rowdies in Indy, and I ended up going with Indy and signed a 3-year deal there, and I lived down the street from my buddy here. And then that was a fun time because me and John would get together and grab a beer every couple weeks, and then also I trained with him all off seasons, and we just had a good time, and it was fun. And then Vancouver just randomly came and and bought me out of my last year, and that's when I did that. So I found out last year from the Vancouver staff that they talked to Martin. They wanted to buy me the year before, but Martin was just like, guys, like give me one more year, because we had gotten to the conference final, and we had a good group, and I think he wanted to just like see if we could redo it. And then the next year we didn't even go to the playoffs. So it just, so then I guess at that point he's like, all right, just take them, like, do whatever. So it's the moving's been tough. That's kind of been the reasons for it all. Like, I've always tried to think of, like, have long-term success, because, that's what I was hearing from John all the time. That's what I believed in. I didn't just kind of sip the juice. I also believed in what he was telling me, and I saw how it worked for him. It's a lot more sacrifice, and it's a lot tougher to do it that way because you're moving all the time and it's not easy. But ultimately what I want is to play as long as I can and at the highest levels I can. And you only have a certain amount of years to do this. So for me, it's like, I'm going to get everything I can out of it and see how far I can push this before I have to, like, hang it all up, And that's kind of been my mentality. My wife hates it, but that's been my mentality.
Yeah.
It's a lot of moving. So, like,
Exactly. Yeah. John Bush had mentioned EV, how stellar his career has been in the USL. Let me just share some information before the season. He was number one in shutouts all time. He's number one in saves all time. He's 24th in USL all-time minutes,
Wow.
EV,
Wow.
which I'm not just talking goalkeeper, right? We're talking field player.
Right, yeah,
which is just amazing when you think about it. 50 regular season shutouts, 478 saves, just a phenomenal career, even though he's been in, basically 10 different cities.
all over the map.
Every year, everything's got to change. New defenders, et cetera, new coaching. So, first, hats off to you and your wife to be able to, perform like this. So,
appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Evie, I know you've got some questions for him, so I'm going to turn it back to you here.
Well, it's not so much questions, but it's interesting that Evan, early on you were told you weren't consistent, but over the last 10 years of your USL career, you've been the model of consistency, because no matter where you've been, you've racked up records, and so, I don't know if they were using that as an excuse back in the day or what, but, you certainly heard that criticism and answered the bell during your career.
If I'm honest with myself, I probably had some consistency stuff that I wasn't great with it. And a lot of it, I think, was just mental confidence. And, like, I would get in these mental, again, you're down there. To be honest, it was probably the most stressful times of my life, at 15, 16, 17 years old, because I took it so seriously. Yeah. Some guys didn't really take it that seriously. They just were there and they were having fun. But for me, it was like, this is all or not. Like, this is it. Like, sure. If I don't make this count, that's how I saw it. Right. You look back and you kind of laugh at that when you look back, but when you're in it, like, you feel like this is everything. And so I think I took it too serious at times, to where, I'd have a bad day. And then now it's like, I was just so up and down. Like, if I was I could ride on some good days for a while, but then I had one or two bad days, and then now I'm, like, dropping, and now my confidence, and now I'm overthinking, and, like, all these things.
Yeah.
And so I had some issues with that, and I had to just, I had to take that and just learn from it, and take the criticism. And, like I said at the beginning, like, you either use it to improve or you use it to be your demise, in a sense. Right. So,
yeah. And it's interesting. I always, I listen to coaches, particularly when they're talking about goalkeepers, and, well, he or she's not very consistent. Okay. And I think to myself, okay, but in order to prove consistency, you have to have a certain amount of games that you can prove you're consistent. It's the old goalkeeper thing. Well, we play him, but he doesn't have enough experience.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You hear what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And I always analogize it with, and I always kid people about this. Kids talk about, wow, man, I'd love to do the sidewinder. And I think, you know what you have to have before you do a sidewinder, don't you? The ball. So let's work on catching the ball. And consistency is the same thing. You got to have consistency, and you know what you got to have consistency. You got to have some games, right? You can't prove your consistency in 3 games, because it's only 3 games.
And you're so right. And, like, that was the hardest like I'm so fortunate that Arizona, took a chance, and how that all worked out is a whole another crazy story. And we've already, we've had enough stories probably, but it was just a absolute blessing how that happened. But like everyone, I thought.
Go ahead, tell that story.
Well, just in the Reader's Digest version, I thought I was gonna have to retire. I thought it would be easy to come from MLS to go play in the NASL or the USL at the time, at least to get it. But everyone, I heard the same thing. Well, you got no experience. Like and I'm like, well, how am I supposed to get it? Like I haven't had the chance, and all these things. And so then I knew I wasn't going to go back to MLS because I was like, all right, I'm trusting what John's telling me. I also think that's the right thing. I need to play. So I didn't even look at MLS teams. And then all of a sudden NASL, I didn't get any sniffs there, like in terms of like offers. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna, their season had been started, so now that's not a chance. And then now the USL season's starting, and it was starting in 2 weeks, and I had no club, and I saw that they weren't even a club because they were Phoenix Wolves the year before, and then they like folded, so no one even knew an Arizona team was gonna have a club, and some guy bought the team like 30 days before the season started, and started this club and called it Arizona United. And I saw this thing. I looked at the website every night before I went to bed, and I saw this thing: Arizona United signs Michael Della Russo as head coach. And first of all, I'm like, who the hell is Arizona United? Second of all, where's Michael Della Russo? Boom, found him. Yeah. Maryland assistant coach. Yeah. Boom. I actually texted Trevor Adair. Trevor, do you have this guy's number? Trevor, yes, I do. I'll get it to you in the morning. Yeah. Trevor got me the number in the morning. I called Mike, and Mike's like, I could tell in his voice, he was like happy that I called. And I'm like, okay, this is good. And he goes, man, this is our situation. I can either he had two options to get guys on loan because he had connections with a couple of MLS teams, or he could have paid to bring me in, right, like out of the budget. And he decided, he actually called John and called a couple other people. And luckily John didn't tell him the stories of me like laying on the garage. But
he's not fit. He's really fit, but he's okay.
Yeah. He's really good. But he's got a penchant for laying in the parking lot. We're not sure about it.
But and then he called me back like a day later, asked me a quick question. Then he's like, all right, I'll let you know. Call me back the next day. He goes, hey, I'm gonna go with you. So he decided to like pay me instead of bringing in these two loan options he had. And then everybody came in for 1 week of preseason, and then we had a game the next weekend. Yeah. So we trained together for 10 days before our first game. We got smoked 4-0. And then from there, we actually made a good little run and started to get gelling. And it was a crazy season, but it was just such a blessing that I had the opportunity. Like, I mean, I almost was going to hang him up. I was like 2 weeks away from probably never playing again,
Sure, yeah. Sure. What a story.
Yeah. And and if there's any young kids listening, and I say this to kids all the time, and I'm sure you guys do as coaches, it's such a small society. Soccer itself is a small society. Goalkeeping is an incredibly small, close-knit society, and you never know who's watching, and you never know who could help you down the road. So, like you were talking about, Evan, make sure what Mark Simpson helped you out early on. Just by talking. If you impress somebody, you're helping yourself. The way to impress somebody is, do the stuff you're supposed to do on a day in, day out basis, because you never know who's watching, and you never know who they know.
And also don't burn bridges. I think.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the one as well. No matter how mad you are or how upset you are in the situation, don't burn bridges, because you never know where that person's going to be later.
That's right.
Whatever. Right. So.
Yeah, I think sorry, George, go ahead.
For you. Give us how you met Ryan Sparks.
So, John, do you want to say what you're going to say, and then I'll answer that?
I was just going to say, I think for me, one of the cool things was, when he was in Indy and I was in Indy, I would train him in the off seasons, and we'd have other pros like Eric Dick coming around, and we had a lot of college kids that would train at the same time. So for me, it was one of those moments, and Evie's had a bunch of these in his career where I'm now using, and not even me, I have this luxury of having a senior pro, in Evan Newton, painting the picture for these young college kids and these young pros. And it was just, I remember one of the mornings in the facility just kind of smirking to myself, going, watching the roles reverse now, because years ago in San Jose, it was me painting the picture for him. And now he's painting the picture for these college kids and these young pros that I was training. And just the consistency, even in January and February, that he would bring to the session, after of course he rolled out for 20 minutes because his body's old, but once he finally got the old engine going,
once he cooled
the
down.
consistency level. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
Trust me, it was cold enough. It was cold enough in there. Well, I want to attest that to
just
John
a consistency
too.
level.
Yeah.
I want to attest that to John too, and like, and and I don't want to like keep tooting his horn here, because that's not how we roll. But to be fair, again, it's that small window. But also the big thing I learned from John too is I remember I think we were sitting at lunch one day, and John used to he goes, look, I will help whoever wants help. And here's, okay, John's number one. The goalkeeper union's a weird thing, right? Because everybody wants to be playing, but then you got to act like you're working together, and it's this whole weird relationships that you have. But John always, I mean, I don't think at that point he wasn't threatened by me, so it was also we were able to have an even better relationship because of that. But he was still willing to help me get better. And at the time, that first year, I had moved into the number 2 spot for a little while. So now I'm still not he's not feeling threatened, but I'm still moving up the ranks here, and he's still we have a great relationship, and he's still, doing everything he can to help me. And that's one thing after that, because I was like I said, I did everything he did. I was trying to watch and learn everything. Okay, how do I be as a number 1? Because that's what I want to be one day, and that's what I know I can be one day. And that's what I've always tried to be since then. But and John said, I never forget this, and I still tell people this today. I kind of use John's words, and I usually give him credit. Sometimes I just take it as mine. But but he used to say, look, if he's like, I'm gonna help whoever wants to help. If you don't want help, okay, whatever. But if you want help and you're worth my time to because you're gonna actually take it, then I have no problem. Because if you're getting better every day, then it continues to make me have to get better every day. So ultimately, yes, a lot of goalkeepers, if they're in the number ones or whatever, they keep everything to themselves because they don't want people to get past them. They don't want them to know their little tricks. But John gave you all that if you wanted it, because ultimately he's like, it's going to keep pushing me to have to be better. Because if you're continuing to get better every year, every week, every year, every day, then I have to. So it keeps me on my toes. And I was like, wow, that's a good way to look at it. So it doesn't allow you to get complacent, because ultimately you're also doing the right thing. You're being a good person. You're being a good pro. You're helping people, and you're also helping yourself in the roundabout way, right?
Yep.
So
yeah.
I've tried to also do that with every position I've been in. I've been fortunate to have great relationships with my number 2s and things, and the number 3s, and I've always tried to take that approach that I did learn from John. So we can X this out later, that I never said any of those things.
Yeah.
But no, I that part of that, where he's smirking is also a testament to how he mentored me, and that he did a good job doing that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and that we're coming close to the end of the session here, but that's a good segue into. I first learned that from a guy that Greg and I are going to Western North Carolina next weekend to honor our college coach, whose name is Hank Steinbrecher. He ran U.S. soccer for many years. And at the college that we played at Warren Wilson, they're naming the soccer complex after him. He used to tell us to be custodians of the game. In other words, help whoever's younger than you, or if they're or kids, if they're wanting to play the game, teach them the game, and a microcosm of that is, be custodians of the position, be custodians of goalkeeping, because you can't play forever. I mean, John Bush tried to, and even John Bush couldn't play forever, and you have to be generous enough to help the people that are coming up behind you, because like you say, it's ultimately, and John's right, ultimately it's going to help you,
Yeah.
and so, and that's where I learned it, and that's where, obviously, the kids that I coached, John was one of them. I tried to instill that in them. It's like we have to continue to grow the game. It's it's like being a farmer, right? Farmers don't make money off of just 1 year of crops. They make money off of crops every year, and you have to take that approach. But we're looking forward to doing that, and congratulations to Mr. Bush for being in the inaugural. This is pretty cool, Bone. In the inaugural University of North Carolina at Charlotte Sports Hall of Fame.
That's cool.
John Bush for soccer, a guy named Cornbread Maxwell, who was obviously a big time college basketball player, but had a run in the NBA. I believe the Celtics for a long time.
Yeah.
When back when the Celtics were the Celtics, I mean, they were good.
Yeah.
Inaugural class. So congratulations on that. And, that's big time. And,
I told John they must, I guess they're letting anybody in these days in Charlotte, right?
No, dude.
Listen,
yeah.
Hey, I only went 3 years and I got in. So
exactly. There's some consistency for you, pal.
Yeah. That person has a degree. That person has a degree. That guy doesn't. He's still here.
That was awesome, and especially for like a program that's done as well as it has over many years. Like to be like the inaugural classes. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And
it's very humbling. It's very humbling when you think about it.
Yeah. But go ahead.
Quickly to finish, like I didn't answer the Ryan.
Oh yes, Ryan Sparks. Yeah.
I don't want to, and he's gonna get mad at me because he's obviously the brains behind all this, so I gotta give him his love. But Ryan's obviously a huge fan of Cincinnati, and I met him in like one of the first events, like the fan player events in Cincinnati, and we chatted for a while, and then just started seeing him at other events and games, and then we just started becoming like buddies, and eventually exchange numbers, and then every now and again we get the families together and like go for dinner or something, and just built a friendship. And AJ, his son is a goalkeeper now and like doing pretty well, and I've tried to I never trained him, but I tried to help speak to him a few times over the years, like about different mentality and things he could do, and just like we just become over the years since Cincinnati, we just become good friends, and they started coming they came to as many indie games as they could after Cincinnati. Like they would travel even just to kind of come, and then we'd go out for dinner a lot sometimes after games and do whatever. So he's just been a good friend and good support for me, and just good guy, man. So that's kind of how we met and where our relationship, how it evolved.
Yeah, good guy, and he knows this part of the business and the technology stuff much better than me and Greg. So we were thrilled that he was interested in helping us out, and he was the guy that said, "Hey, you got to get in touch with Evan because he's got some good stories." So and that obviously is what 3-0 Goalkeepers is built on. So, but Evan,
and then you bring John on, and we got even more stories.
I know, yeah.
This thing could be like 12 hours worth if we.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if Ryan told you, but this whole idea of the 3-0 Goalies podcast is predicated on, Greg and I were talking once, and I was like, we should do like a podcast or a vlog or something of basically the conversations we have at the bar at the coaches convention. Because every year you go to the coaches convention, you see the same guys, you can go over the same stories year after year after year. Every year they get a little better, because
The fish
you
gets
embellish.
bigger.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the fish thing. Yeah, I once caught a fish this big, but and that's it's fun. It's fun to do it. It's fun. It's fun to hear the different stories. And what I've come of the episodes we've done, there are certainly threads that are consistently interwoven in everybody's story about, particularly goalkeepers, about, a guy who kind of showed the way, a guy kind of opened the door, a guy who kind of gave you advice, or a guy that helped you out at a time when you needed help to make that jump to the next level, whatever that was, and so that's fun. That part to me is fun. So
Well, this is even cool because we have kind of 3 generations of mentors here. Like, I know you had a big influence in John, and then John's obviously had a big influence in me. And
oh yeah,
so it's kind of interesting that we've kind of now, or it's kind of cool that we're now all on this one kind of podcast, this one episode. But but to go off of that, like how the fish gets bigger. Like the first couple years, John told that story about the red carpet. I was in first I was in Fresno, then I was in Bakersfield. Now all of a sudden I'm in LA.
LA, baby.
No, you were definitely in LA. I do remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember.
Next time it's gonna be like I took a private flight down there. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
Listen, you had 2 reserve games. Who knows what you did? You had 2 reserve games under your belt. So.
Yeah.
So we'll see we'll see where I was in the next 10 years. Where I was.
What I think is cool, though, Deutsche, what I think is cool is it started with Hank, right?
Yeah,
and I know how much he means to you guys, and I know how much he means to EV, and obviously everybody knows how much EV means to me. So for me to see it started with Hank, it went to EV. EV gave it to all of us, all the third sons and everybody underneath him, and now you see it. I'm sure if we talk to Aiden Heaney, he's doing the same thing for his guys, and Taylor doing the same thing with the goalkeepers. But it all started with Hank. It all started with Hank. So I think that's that's very cool and very special for you too to know that.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it because it's as you guys know, Hank's had some health issues, and this is going to be obviously a big trip for him to make, but it's a chance, and I know quite a few of the guys who played back then are coming back to see him again, and so it'll be a good time. So
good. Well,
anything
please tell him we said hello.
We'll do.
I'm very grateful for Ryan, as I mentioned at the start, for hooking us up because he didn't have to do it, and you and I were like, hey, who do we want to get next? And out of nowhere, hey, let's get Evan Newton. What?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's get it done, and it took a few weeks because of everyone's schedule, but and then I thought of getting John Bush on because I found out he was his mentor, so sort of how it works here. Goalies TV, we put it all together and throw it out there and see what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what makes it fun and organic, and I appreciate you guys have me on and even want me to be on, so I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure, and anytime, love to jump on again anytime. So
okay, we'll definitely do that again. We'll definitely have you back on. So Bushy, how's Tampa?
Yes,
good?
Sir. It's okay. I'm working on my tan.
All right, man. That's great.
Working on my tan.
That's great.
He's only done 2 sessions in the month and a half he's been there.
We have had more lightning cancellations.
It's great, isn't it? It's great, isn't it?
You could coach for another 15 years.
You could. I know.
You could.
Yeah.
In the 4 or 5 weeks I've been here, we've canceled more than I ever did in Indiana. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, dude. If I was on the field in Tennessee and I heard of lightning in Florida, we didn't train because there's lightning in the United States. We're not training. So.
Listen, I'm telling you, if they allow me to hire an assistant, I'm calling you, because you got another 15 years down here. You have another 15 years, no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
That's good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, thank you for joining us, Evan. Thanks again, Bushy. Thanks for showing up. And Greg, as
You got
always,
it.
thanks for being the Mike Wallace of the 3-0 goalies and putting together the interviews. It's always fun to listen to. It's always fun to be a part of. And join us next time once we figure out. We'll probably do something, I think, Greg, around this thing coming up with Hank and
Yeah, that'd be cool to do.
Yeah.
Again, shout out to Mr. Pat Johnston.
Yes.
Close that out.
Yeah.
Make
yeah.
sure, squad with a W. Squad with a W.
Squad with a W, because everybody loves a W.
Yeah, exactly.
So until next time, guys, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you. And good night, Captain. Talk to you later, guys.